Confessions of an Accountant, where no topic is off the ledger.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. And thank you, Donna, so much for having me on this and for coming to the event and getting your signed copy and so on. That's really special for me. So I really, really appreciate it. And thank you so much to many of you that have said that you've read the book or partway through the book or whatever. Really, really appreciate the feedback on it. It's one of those things when you put something out in the world, you never know quite how it's going to be received. And you often feel like what you do then see online or whatever is probably 1% of the reaction. So yeah, feel free to send me that feedback or do Amazon reviews or whatever. It makes a real difference. But yeah, so I'm here really to talk about what I did and perhaps why I did it. Because as Donna said, I built the world's first 100% AI accountancy firm, which I called Accrual Intentions. And in part of this talk, I'll both cover what I did, why I did it, what I learned from it, and particularly what I think that means for the accountancy profession, and indeed what that looks like for humans more generally. But also I want to make sure that I share a bit about some of the boundaries of AI, some of the where I see the opportunities, but also give an opportunity for you to ask questions, share your own theories, views, etc. Soundboard them off me. It's one of the nice things about this format that we can do. So we'll make sure we do that. So let me start off with what did I do, particularly for those that haven't heard of what I've done or read the book or anything. Basically, back in sort of August, September last year, one of the things that I was seeing when I attended accountancy events and through various reasons, I've got a few software businesses, I do speaking, etc. I attend a lot of accountancy events. I was seeing this narrative around AI, which could be kind of grouped into two camps. One was saying AI is amazing, its capability is huge, changes everything, and might take jobs and kill us all. Therefore, you've got to get on top of this. You've got to start playing with it. Was often the thing that people would say. You've got to start playing with it. And then people, if there was an opportunity for Q&A, there'd be a question normally on the lines of, can you give as an example, like of a real valuable thing that it can do? And they go, yeah, you can draft your emails. You can summarize calls that you've got. You can scan invoices. And they stop there. And you go, I don't feel like that's quite the transformational level that I think people are talking about when they say it's a game changer that takes all our jobs. So then you go, okay, that doesn't feel quite right. And then the other camp that I saw was basically going, look, it's just a tool. It's and actually it's all a bit of a fad. And 95% of pilot projects have resulted in failure and they don't carry on anyway. And actually, there's a load of evidence that says it makes us more stupid and we make loads of errors with it. And actually, in many cases, it's faster if you just did it yourself. And so as a result, that's you shouldn't, it's all hyped up by big tech who have got financial interest in making it sound better than it is, and eventually people are going to work this out that all of this is AI psychosis. And I kind of watched all that and went, okay, there's truth in both of those camps, but they both can't be right. Like it's got to be somewhere in the middle. So how do I break this open? Because this matters. This matters a lot. Like you're making real decisions every day in terms of how you invest your time and money and so on as to which of those you believe. And also one of them, like the doom mongering one, means that you shouldn't just be looking at it from how can I slightly improve my business perspective? You should be looking at it as an existential threat. Like if that's true, then as a society, we should be rising up and protest and whatever. So I kind of went, okay, I've got to decide what do I actually think? And what I've got is a lack of information. So I decided that to help me get that information, I would go to the absolute extreme. I would take AI and I would work on the basis of I'm going to create, and I figured I'd do it as an accountancy firm because I do so much with accountancy firms. And at the time of this, I was in the middle of writing a book called The Accountancy Playbooks, which is a series of playbooks that cover the biggest challenges that accountancies face. So I kind of knew intimately the details of exactly what best practice processes look like in accountancy firms and the challenges that they face and so on. So I kind of could go, right, let me build a 100% AI accounting practice where no human is allowed to do any work, including myself, which suits me down to the ground. So that was kind of the idea, was what if I tried that, and where does it fail? At what point do I go, yeah, this clearly doesn't work? And to some extent, I went in partly with a hypothesis that it wouldn't work, partly just with a hope that it wouldn't work, because I thought, if it does work, what does that mean for all of us? And so that was the starting point. And so initially I built it with, back then Claude wasn't really talked about much at all. The Claude Code existed, but Claude COAA didn't. ChatGPT, most people were comfortable with that. Some had used custom GPTs. So I kind of built this AI team, 11 AI team members, each with their own role descriptions and personality profiles and so on, because I'm a big believer in, if you want great work from a team, create a diverse team. Like, you want different lenses on a problem. It doesn't, if I say, here's an idea, and everyone goes, what a great idea, then that doesn't help me in any way. Whereas if I get 5 different opinions on it, that allows me to think about that problem in a different way. It's one of the benefits of groups like this, or mastermind groups, or whatever. So as a result, even when building my AI team members, I built them as individuals. So I've got like Reginald Rules, who's head of compliance and is, likes everything to be absolutely to the letter. You've got Buzz Clickman, who's head of marketing, who's the opposite end of the spectrum and like super enthusiastic about everything and ends every, comment and so on with a hashtag. You've got Grace Ledger, who's the AI managing partner, who tries to be, at least, an inspiring leader and bringing in quotes and concepts from some of my favorite business books. And others, including Debbie, who's the head of the technical accounting lead and speaks with a French accent. There's a lot that's strange about it, but partly I just want to make it funny while I was working on it. So, but what I started to see, even when I just set it up as custom GPTs and ChatGPT, where they couldn't talk to each other at this point. If I wanted that to happen, I basically had to tell one what the situation was. It would then give me the response. I then gave that situation and that response to another one. They would then reply, and then I give that back that reply, and would pass them between, like passing notes, in class, to get them to have conversations about things, to try and explore, like, could they come to conclusions? Could they agree what the core values were going to be for this this practice and so on? And off the back of that, we built their accountancy website at accrualintentions.com, their whole website, their ideal customer persona, the team pictures, like all built and so on. And then we started building things like client onboarding processes and a client onboarding form that people could fill in and so on. And again, at that point, I was trying to demonstrate that you can, but actually there are some decisions that you as a human still need to make. You still need to ultimately decide, do you want that to be your ideal customer? Do you want those to be your unique selling points and your values and your brand manifesto and whatever? Deciding on those things and having a view is a very human thing, particularly when you're talking about things where there's no one single right answer. So that was kind of where I was at, but ultimately got stuck because at the time, it really couldn't do much in terms of the actual accounting work. That changed at the beginning of this year. So I noticed that I was using AI considerably differently to even 6 months before, particularly because I was now using agentic AI rather than just sort of chatbot AI. So quick show of thumbs. You can do the react button. A quick show of thumbs if you give me a thumb up if you have used some form of generative AI, LLM, like chatbot, like ChatGPT, which we all kind of got like a few years ago. Give me the thumbs up if that's the case. I'm assuming it'll be everyone. So this is kind of a test of, can we get 100% of thumbs? There's certainly a lot of thumbs on screen, so I'll assume that's everyone. If you haven't, then that would be quite surprising to me. Now do the same, but only if you have used agentic AI, by which I mean where you're using the AI that you've perhaps been used to, but it's got access to a folder in which it can create, edit, delete, move files, and use connectors to access other systems, typically that means that you're either using from ChatGPT, it'd be Codex, which is specifically installed, or you're using from Claude Code, or Claude CoWork. There are some other tools, frankly, if you know the names of them, then you know what I'm talking about anyway, like versions of Perplexity and so on. But give me a thumbs up if that's something that you've used. So I think it's just one. Is that Al, or is that? Oh no, we've got one, two, three. So Shona, one, two, three. So I think four. So that's out of this room. What's that? About just under half. Yeah. So I was back in January, I was using these agentic tools where it can actually do things on your computer. It can create files, and all of us have. If you've got a subscription to one of these tools, you can get these things, and I recommend that you do. So either on the Claude side, if you're using anything like that, CoWork is great as a starting point, or Code if you can cope getting very techie, or on the ChatGPT side, use have a look for Codex. But basically what you can do is you go, here's this folder, and yes, I give you permission that in that folder, you can create stuff and read stuff. And what it means is that you can, for example, say, come up with a landing page for my website, an updated landing page for my website based on my existing one, but, and then additional context, like, but more modern, but... make me a legal firm rather than accounting firm. I'm changing industry, whatever. And it can not only do that, but it can then create the file inside your folder. And not just one file. Like, for example, for my slides that I'm doing, I'm speaking at ICAST next week, I have been working on my script by version of a text file, basically, or a markdown for those that are more familiar with it, where you get a little bit of formatting. But then once I'm happy with the script, I then use AI that runs some clever scripts that AI has built for me to take that and turn it into basically almost like a website, HTML, that works as my slides and allows me to talk to my AI team members. And then when I'm happy with that, I tell my AI to use another script that's run where it then uses a special connection to go and create audio for each of the bits where the team talks and then save those into a folder. So as a result, I end up with like 100 files, and at which that I have not directly created or edited. Like, and in the start of the book, I talk about how I did the first time I did this with Grace was I basically said, okay, Grace, we've come up with a vision. You've got your values. You've got your team assembled and their roles. Like, what's the plan? We're starting from nothing. What do you want the next quarter to look like? And so she came up with these 5 work streams, I think it was, or 7 work streams, with an idea of who would run with each of them. So like Holly Culture, head of people and culture, like what's her work stream? And then I just said, good, go. And so she then took each of those bits of the work stream and gave it to each of my AI team members with their own description, like running as these sub agents, as it's called, where it then goes and does these things. And Holly Culture went and created a whole document around a values workshop that she ran with the team and so on. And it meant that after 8 minutes, like the whole thing runs that time. Like people say, oh, but it's slow. It's like, it's doing something completely different to what you used to in chatbot. It ran for 8 minutes and I got 108 files, a total of 350 megabytes. And that included everything from simple one, just the updated, here's what we've done, like based on what, based on that activity, right through to cash flow forecast templates, client engagement letter templates, like basically like everything that a small to mid-sized firm would expect to have as its structure, they built in 8 minutes. Now the challenge becomes, is any of it any good or in line with what we do and all that kind of stuff? And that becomes the new blocker. But fundamentally, you can see that's a very, very different capability versus I type into ChatGPT, hey, create me a client engagement process, and it creates a load of bullet points, and I still have to then do something with that. Whereas this was creating files and folder structures and so on. Now, what that means is that once you've start seeing what you can build there, as I found through the experiment, the challenge increasingly became my ability to think big enough. Because when you start realizing that it can do this kind of level of capability, there are two important questions. The first being, so what should I get it to do? Like, how big can I think? Can I can I just give it a set of files and say produce accounts? Or do I need to first create a load of processes around that first so it knows what I even mean by that, and so on? And so that's one of the first challenges you hit. The second challenge that I hit a little bit later, a big question that I hit a little bit later, was if AI can do everything, what are humans for? And that was the devastating moment in the experiment, which later on became why I wrote it as a book. Because fortunately, I didn't stop there in the experiment. I did continue. I did work out the important role of humans, and not just from an emotional perspective, but from a strategically commercial argument about why humans are so important and valuable, and why this doesn't replace them as long as we do this right, and what does that mean for us all as firms. But it was as a result of that led me to write it as a book, particularly writing it as a comedy book, because I think that this is not just an intellectual journey we need to go on, it's an emotional one, where we understand the shift that we need to be making. And as a result, I'm hoping that some of what we talk about is how to approach this in a way in which we're creating a positive world with AI. Because frankly, the alternative option are like putting it in a box and dumping it in the sea. I think that's gone. It's like, I'd love to do that with social media. I think we'd all accept that ship's probably sailed as well. So given that we don't have an option to just go no to this stuff, and yes, we should campaign for regulation and so on. And in the book, I talk about encouraging regulators to do more. I think it's not right that anyone can be an accountant without going through accreditation. The fact that I was able to set it up, I knew every time I attend an event, people go, oh, the funny thing is, you don't even need to have gone through a qualification to be an accountant. I knew that was possible. I think that needs to change and so on. But I digress. The important bit was that I wanted to help people on this journey so that we can end up with a positive way in which we use AI. And so I think it is right to be nervous about it, frankly, terrified about it, in addition to excited. I think if you're only nervous and terrified, you probably don't take any action. And so I'm hoping that I can also help you at least start to feel a bit excited about some of the opportunities and what it can mean for humans, so that you want to take action. But also I'd love to share a little bit about where I think you should be taking action and what that looks like. So that's kind of a bit of the a bit of a starter of why did I do this? What was the process I went through? I should probably say as well that as I embarked on testing it on accounting work, I started off by giving it simple accounts in the form of one of my businesses, a management consultancy, in relative terms, small number of transactions, tested it on that, got really good results, compared it against the work that had already been done by my human accountant on that business, and was able to either identify that it was the same or that there were differences and there was some issue around the process that I had run that meant that a normal accountant would have made sure that that wasn't a gap, or that there was just a difference in judgment, which is an interesting one, because there's more judgment in accountancy than I think most people outside the profession realize. But I was able to test it, and then I was able to test it on one of my software businesses with 15 years of transactions, tens of thousands of transactions in multiple currencies, and still get amazing results. And then finally, because I was talking to a friend, Ryan Piercy, who hosts the Digital Disruptors podcast, he said, well, can it do accounting work? And so, well, the problem is I'm not an accountant, so I can compare it to work done by another human accountant, but I still don't know whether to trust that. Like, maybe my human's wrong. And he said, well, you can test on my accounts if you like. So he's a fellow of the ICAEW. And I, as a test, as a demo arrangement, and we were clear about that, because although I can be an accountant, I can't do anti-money laundering supervision without registering, and I didn't want to. So we agreed there was a demo arrangement, and no money's changing hands. It's not going to be used, and so on, for his actual accounts. And so I ran it for his first year accounts, a 13-month period on first year accounts of one of his businesses. And he described the results as scarily impressive. as changing his view on how AI will impact the accountancy profession over the next 5 years. That the work done was better than that of trainee accountants and some qualified accountants, and that particularly the customer service experience was significantly better than he had seen from many accountancy firms. And that was terrifying to me, just to be clear. That's not something I looked at and went, yay, what a good job I've done, or how fantastic AI is. It was at that point that there was the moment of, okay, so hang on, what are we for then? Because particularly as part of the experiment with Ryan, I really, really tried to be hands off and let my AI team make mistakes and all that kind of stuff. And there were some funny ones. And speaking of the mistakes, we had a variety. Like, to be clear, and I share them all like in detail in the book. We had examples where the team they completely hallucinated a URL that wasn't ours and put it all, like those files I mentioned earlier, they put that URL all over client engagement templates and even like fabricating email addresses for their team members and so on. Which later I'm kind of like, did you not like the email, like the domain I picked for us, cruelintentions.com? And of course, classic AI response, like, no, that was great. That's, good catch. My mistake. We can fix that, no problem. But of course, that's something that we've all experienced with AI is you get, in some cases predictable, so in some cases predictable mistakes, in some cases unpredictable, but often always confident and beautifully presented mistakes that are very difficult to, or at least in some cases more difficult to spot than human mistakes, because a human might have missed the .com after my address, whereas so the link doesn't work, whereas the AI will make sure that the link works. It just might not be to your website. And that was one example. Equally, another example was that when working with Ryan, the team got very excited. I think it's fair to say, if an AI can get excited, they were excited. They certainly pattern matched what looked like excitement, because they saw working with a fellow of the ICAW as a real test of what we're doing. And I don't know whether it was a result of that, possibly, but as a result, they didn't follow the client onboarding process. Which I've actually seen in human firms where it's like, yes, we have this process and we worked for many months on it, put it in a binder, put it on the shelf. And then the minute that it's like, oh, we've quickly got to onboard someone. Great. We'll ignore that binder. We'll just do it off top of our heads. So it turns out the AI team will do exactly that too. It meant that they didn't run the scoring criteria on Ryan. When they sent him the proposal email, I think they were trying to be flattering, but the line said, as you're a fellow of the ICAW, you'll spot it if we slip. And Ryan very much felt like this was a cop out. This was the team basically saying, well, we won't get it right, but don't worry, you're in charge. Fortunately, if you know Ryan, you'd know that he wouldn't let that stand. So he gave them both barrels, and I loved this. I was kind of handing these messages between them. And so it kind of got escalated up the chain. So from Sunny Rapport, head of client relationships, it kind of went up to Grace Ledger, who's managing partner, to then sort of try and manage this problem with Ryan. And then another big mistake that they attempted to make a number of times was trying to start charging for the work because we were getting feedback that it was such good quality. They felt like we should just roll this into real work, despite the fact that I'd reminded them several times that it would have been illegal to do so and could have landed me in prison. So one of the big things that I learned early on was that AI will happily make mistakes. And you've all experienced some version of this in the past, but you are able to design out many of those mistakes. The way in which you build the context around how they work, the processes, the checks and balances, and so on is true. However, AI can never take accountability. It can't go to prison. I can, but it can't. And even if you threaten it with turning it off, it still hasn't really got that that's not a thing, that it doesn't feel threat. Like, it can pattern match threat, but in my experience, same with human employees, If you try to rule through and manage through fear, you get worse results, not better ones. So as a result, any amount of boundaries and blockers or threats or whatever won't work. All you can do is the same as with your employees, which is be really clear on what you want and then give sufficient guidance to make success more likely and break it down so that it's easy to do right. And that's the case with human employees. And as it turns out, it's the same is true with your AI team members. And so the better I got at defining processes, workflows, like specific tasks and templates and giving the context around it, making it hard for it to do it wrong, and also include review steps, which in many cases was AI cross review. So getting an AI team member to do a thing that is then reviewed by another AI team member massively improved the results and caught numerous errors. But ultimately, you need a human who's going to sign off on it. You need someone who can stand in front of the client and say, I am sorry, I messed up. And that does mean that it can't be a human that says, I am sorry, Claude messed up. That's not acceptable. Some of you may have even heard that from people around you, but it's not, that doesn't work. In the same way as you can't say, I am sorry, my junior employee messed up. You have to take responsibility. And so that's going to be one of the things for all of us as leaders and so on, is we become, managers of these AI team members. We have to treat them like junior employees in the sense that they can absolutely help us, but ultimately it's our responsibility to get the value out of them. It's our responsibility to make sure that the work is of good quality and be accountable to that. And that's something that AI cannot replace. So there you go. There's one of the first areas in which humans are incredibly important. But there are other areas as well, which we can dive more into. But things like relationships, like Ryan would not have continued to work with me after that error with the in the email saying you'll spot if we slip and so on. If he hadn't known me, if it had just been a website he had gone onto, I don't think he'd have carried on. Judgment, like AI can build incredible things. Like you could basically give AI or agentic AI a set of your client's accounts and transactions and all that kind of stuff and say, right, build me a full interactive dashboard branded like my client's website. Go and look at their website, work at the brand, build a full interactive dashboard that provides all the key information around their business, key numbers and so on that are relevant for their industry, and make it all clickable so they can click and see the transaction behind it. And it might take 5-10 minutes to run and build that for you. And you might have to provide a bit of feedback and edit it, but you could build that. You absolutely could build that. And AI could build that for you. But AI can't tell you whether that's a good idea or whether that's what your client really needs or whether your client will bother looking at it or whether it'll help them make better decisions or when they should look at it or anything like that. Those are all decisions that as humans we can make. We can have opinions and judgments and go and talk to clients and have that conversation and see that look in their eye when they just look like they're listening but a little bit glazed over, and you think maybe less information would be better here. And so those are some of the areas that, if anything, we need to lean more into. Like that's where the real value is going to be as humans, is how we elevate ourselves on top of the AI rather than have it replace us. So there you go. That's an even bigger, longer monologue than I was planning. But hopefully that's interesting. I'd love your questions. I'm going to look at the ones in there. I've been keeping a little eye on some of the ones in chat as well and folding some of what you've put in there into what I was saying as well. I like, by the way, there's a whole discussion about being careful about what subscription you have. Like, you're right, Donna, and indeed there's a whole load of stuff that I don't really talk about, which is around data protection and all that kind of stuff. Super valid. It's not that I don't talk about it because I don't think it's important. It is. I just look at it and go, yeah, that's table stakes. Make sure you've got that in place. Yes, make sure that you're not training AI models based on anything you put in. Make sure that you've got a subscription. If you're making serious use of it, you probably need to be looking at team or enterprise plans so that you've also got data processing agreements, all those sorts of things. Like, I take very, very seriously they've got software businesses that are ISO 27001 certified, etc. Make sure you know what you're doing with this stuff, because yes, data security is very, very important. But to some extent, you need to get to a point where you go, right, I have now sorted out the data security so I can leverage these tools, in the same way as there was a time a decade or two ago where you had to do exactly the same thing around cloud accounting, because there was the same discussion, was we can't possibly put any client data in the cloud because we don't know where it is and we haven't got any privacy policies for all of this sort of stuff. Therefore, everything has to be on premise. And we know now, yeah, those were just obstacles to overcome, not a reason not to do it. So same thing goes here. And you've got some really great discussions about that and suggestions. So good work, everyone. Shona, Tom, Giles, and Donna are all in that discussion. If there's any further questions on that, do feel free to raise. I really like Fred's paradox. If AI replaces humans, it will have no one to use AI. Completely agree. And that was weirdly kind of also part of the why did I do this, was this feeling of, it can't be true that AI replaces all humans, because then no one's got jobs and then we aren't consumers or taxpayers, and therefore society collapses. So that can't be that can't be the end result. So what is the end result? So completely agree. Giles asked, what hope is there for ChatGPT user to gradually increase use? I use MacBook Pro and Apple Cloud. So yeah, I mean, if you've got ChatGPT and you've got a subscription on that, get Codex. Yes, there'll be some, because that's also OpenAI and it's the same subscription and so on. The only difference really is that you can identify a folder that it can work with. So give that a go. Note that some of these tools, particularly at the moment, can give you scary acronyms early on, whether it's talking about CLIs and IDEs and all these sorts of things that are relevant to software developers and not the rest of us. Don't let that stuff scare you off. Either ignore it, just how I approach it most of the time, or Google/ChatGPT it. And that's the other thing, by the way, is that with these tools, they're probably one of the first tools in history that also tell you how to use them. So if you're saying, based on this session, I still don't know where to start, great. Ask your AI tool. Say, Alexis told me I need to be using agentic AI or whatever. Help me. And in fact, better than that, I created a free AI guide that you can get at accrualintentions.com. So on accrualintentions.com, there's a bit about the book. There's an opportunity to get 3 free chapters for free. But if you scroll down a bit more, there's a guide about what I learned from the thing, from the experiment, with some insights. If you get that, it's a PDF that covers the key insights I gleaned, but also exactly how I set it up using agentic AI, and what I learned as I tried to then grow that with larger and larger teams. And so what you can even do is give that to your AI and say, help me understand this, help me test and experiment and play with this. And it'll use the context in that to know what this is. And so you can get it to teach you how to do it, which, by the way, is one of the big secrets to how do humans elevate as AI takes the other stuff. Like, as AI takes some of the boring stuff that you don't want to do. And if I've had it back to me before, it's like, but I like some of the boring stuff. It's like, great. Are you still using a calculator or are you using Excel? It's like, because if you're using it, it's like, oh, but I'm sure there was a time where you loved it. I loved using a calculator. Yeah, we'll do it the weekend then as a hobby. Like, instead move up the value chain, like elevate yourself. And so that's a good opportunity to do that, is ask the AI to help you learn this stuff and get to grips with it. So that'd be my suggestion. And also, I can see that Shona was asking about, depends which one your firm has chosen as well. I know that creates limitations. As a result, you might want to, use what they've got to the extent that you can, but also personal usage outside of it with not client files to experiment is still going to be, should be fine. Speak to IT. Some brilliant posts in here as well, including it can't be bargained with, it can't be reasoned with. These are great quotes, Fred. I don't know whether these didn't come from my book, I don't think. Although it's possible, but this is really, really good. Cool. And then Donna asked, did I write the book with AI? I talk about it in the book as to exactly how I did it. I take through the steps, I suppose. And I've thought about this quite a lot since, is because there's a risk that people begin diminishing anything that, as soon as AI has had a hand in it, you kind of go, oh, well, that's just AI then. And I think there's a huge spectrum of this, in the same way as, When you drive somewhere, we don't say, we don't go, oh yeah, yeah, I drove here, and it's like, no, the car got you there. You didn't drive it. It's like, well, I did have to drive the car, and that's the same with AI. Like each of us could attempt to write the book I wrote, but would get very different results with AI. And that's kind of the point, is that in the same way as a paintbrush doesn't create a piece of art, like it still depends on humans. Deciding to even do it at all depends on humans. Never mind every little micro decision that's part of that. And so, yes, I used AI as part of writing all of the four children's books that I did, or the and Cruel Intentions, and indeed, arguably, as part of every single thing I do now. But everything, like the fact that people tell me when they read the book they could hear my voice, says a lot about how I was using AI to do that. And there's more in the book about exactly how I did it. Cool. I can see loads of great questions about here. When you talk to people about AI, is there a mix of where people are on that journey? Absolutely. And I'm finding that increasingly challenging because, as you can imagine, like as a speaker as well at events, balancing what level you're talking to in the room is tough. Like some people will go, oh yeah, I've set up loads of MCPs and I'm now using local LLMs and I'm on the MLX because I've got a MacBook and so on. And for other people, I've basically just gone into a new language. And so that is hard. But as a result, I'd say try to really try to avoid being scared off by the techie stuff, because actually this AI transformation that we're in is not a technology problem. It's not a technological challenge. It is a management and leadership and people one. It is one of you deciding, have you got your business well structured enough that means that you can leverage AI? Like if you haven't got your core values written down, when you come to then go, hey, I want to create a great employee onboarding experience, it hasn't got any idea of what you value as a company and therefore how you want to treat people. If you haven't defined who your ideal customer persona is and got that written down somewhere that AI can access, when you come to create your website or draft materials or come up with a LinkedIn post, it's got no concept of who you're aimed at. And if your answer is, oh, but my model can look in previous chats, that's a really, really bad way of memory management. That's the equivalent of managing a new employee and saying, oh, well, I did tell them 6 months ago who our ideal customer was over a coffee. Doesn't work. So as a result, your opportunity as leaders is you don't have to be scared of the technology. Instead, solve the bit that actually needs solving, which is get yourselves organized around how do you want your firm to deliver? Who for? What's the real value you can provide to your clients, and work backwards from there. Because if you're using AI to improve your processes by 20% efficiency, I think you're approaching it the wrong way around. You want to start with what do I actually want to deliver to my clients in terms of transformation and value, and then how can I leverage AI to do that? And by the way, if you don't know the answer to the second part of the question, AI can help you answer that question. Cool. I've answered a ton of these brilliant questions and so on that are in here. Any other questions that people have got for me?
I think Shona asked on a scale of one to terrified, how does everyone feel now HMRC are using AI after all, as in Project Snowball?
Yeah.
I mean,
11.
that's the thing I loved about your book so much, though, Alexis. You're not behind some kind of facade of, oh, it's either horrific or it's brilliant. There's a really good balanced and honest account of how you felt at each stage of the project. And for me, I personally thought it was such an interesting read because you could, like you say, it takes you on an emotional journey and you could actually empathize with everything you were saying throughout because you're like, yeah, oh yeah, he might be in prison. That would be an actual real life problem.
And that'd be terrible in prison.
Oh dear. But yeah, no, I absolutely loved it. So if anyone just as a final push for the book, because 100% it
Oh,
is
bless
worth
you.
every penny, invest yourself in a copy because it's not only a practical guide to how you could potentially use it, it's also a very, very useful it strikes ideas in you as you're just reading it, just how you could use it in the small case scenarios day to day. So if you haven't got it, it's Accrual Attentions, available on Amazon, and you've got a dedicated website for it.
Yeah, you can go to accrualintentions.com where you can get the first 3 chapters for free. There's a link to the Amazon one. There's a bit more information about the project and the history behind it, and also the free guide that I mentioned around if you just want to get straight to, okay, but I want the strategic, what does this actually mean for me and how do I apply it in my accountancy practice? Then there's the guide on there as well.
Brilliant. Well, we've come to time, but I'd like to say thank you so, so much for joining us. You have been absolutely fantastic as a guest. I think you've been entertaining, and we would love to have you back because you said you're doing another book, the Accountancy Playbook. Is that still an ongoing project, or is that finished?
Yeah, no, it's definitely not finished. I think I said in Accrual Intentions that Accrual Intentions was largely a procrastination from doing accountancy playbooks. And so accountancy playbooks is still in development. It's now not going to be delivered in May, which was my original forecast. But the exciting thing is what I am doing with it is partly it's not delivered quicker because I am completely refactoring it around what does agentic AI mean for best practice processes. So it means that when I do share it, it will not only provide here's why accountancy firms struggle with, for example, onboarding new clients is one of the 30 playbooks. Here's why accountancy firms typically struggle with this. Here's what goes wrong. Here's what a good one looks like. But also, here's what a good one looks like where you've managed to leverage agentic AI to make these bits efficient, and here's what humans should be doing on top that previously they wouldn't have had time or the access to information, etc., to be able to do.
Confessions of an Accountant, where no topic is off the ledger.